fanatics, not reformers. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, the open borders mafia wants to demoralize you.
Public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. Our goal right now is to continue to make the case to the American people who know that the behavior of ICE and other law enforcement agencies within the Department of Homeland Security is immoral and it's illegal. Public pressure can lead to decisive action in the Congress.
All right, the first 5 seconds of him is enough for me, but they want you to get hung up on a few polls that supposedly show a shift in public opinion on immigration enforcement. So we've had weeks of biased coverage and a few, tragic incidents. That was bound to affect the public psyche. But it won't, and it should not stop President Trump. The law is the law, and it was a cornerstone of his campaign. In fact, enforcement operations, as I told you last night, continued today in Minnesota, which is infuriating the Antifa set and all their cohorts who are still on the ground there. This is from the Red Star Tribune today. That's my little nickname for the Minneapolis Red Star Tribune. Inside the Whipple building, it appeared to be business as usual. Several groups of immigration agents were seen entering with lunch or putting their masks back on to go back out at around 1 p.m. More were milling about inside. Workers inside the building said they were not aware of plans to reduce the number of agents working in the state, or if they were, and they were not talking about it. So, good. Look, if there's some reallocation of resources, that's totally fine. But Donald Trump will never, and I mean never, cower to the Antifa crowd and their protectors inside state government. And firing people in the Trump administration is not going to shut up any of these people either. So I'm not sure what Kristi Noem's future is and what it will be, but she's a patriot. And Stephen Miller is one of the brightest minds in the administration, someone who's been fighting the immigration battles for years. And by the way, a lot of them with me. Sidelining him would be an affront to MAGA and only embolden the left. They get that scalp, that's off to the races. Now, despite Walz's slight change in tone, remember his goal. The governor's goal is 0 ICE arrests.
Tom Homan's a professional, which is a lot more than Bovino and Kristi Noem. But look, I think the thing we said is we're very clear about this, that we need these folks out of Minnesota.
Yeah, he wants them out, period. He wants no immigration enforcement. Now, that's in line with recent history. Case in point, Ecuadorian illegal German Adriano Langari Inga. Now, this was another horrific DUI case where Mr. Inga is accused of crashing head-on into an SUV, going over the middle line, killing an innocent mom and injuring 2 others, including one, her sister, and the other, her daughter. But last May, when Hennepin County finally got around to arresting Mr. Inga, it ignored an ICE detainer that had been filed against him, releasing the suspect onto the streets. Now, when ICE objected, county prosecutors said, oh, well, we don't do immigration law. Now, you should know this. This is the go-to response that the open borders advocates spout to defend the indefensible.
The jails are not allowed to hold somebody for ICE if the jail would not otherwise be holding that person. That is asking the local jurisdiction to do immigration enforcement's job for them. And at that, the local jurisdiction, that is not the local jurisdiction's job.
Okay, that might work in some interviews. People don't know the law, but it's nonsense. Honoring an ICE detainer simply means cooperating with ICE, alerting the agency ahead of any release of a suspect in order to prevent that individual from fleeing the area. That also has the added benefit of keeping the community safe. So all makes sense. But sanctuary cities don't care. Resisting ICE is like a religion to these people, and it's worth to them risking American lives. And all these mild notes of cooperation notwithstanding, Democrats' default position is to side with illegals. That's why rapists and murderers were roaming free in Minnesota when ICE arrived. Sanctuary city policies plus open borders propaganda plus activist boots on the ground equals lawlessness. Mark Zito, the special agent in charge for HSI in Minnesota, said it very well. Every time local jurisdictions refuse to cooperate with ICE and every time activists use their ridiculous whistles and bullhorns to alert criminal aliens, they're helping violent offenders, including convicted sex predators, escape justice. We're talking monsters, such as Mahad Abdul Qadir Yusuf, a criminal illegal alien and convicted sex offender from Somalia. When ICE first arrived at the building to arrest him in December, the building manager and other neighbors obstructed them. Undeterred, though, ICE returned and carried out the arrest. And how do communists describe the act of taking criminals off the streets?
These ICE raids are cruel and inhumane, and that they do nothing to actually serve the interests of public safety, and that public safety is of paramount importance to us.
He's a communist, not a socialist, by the way. And by the way, that's another lie. He cares about public safety. It's of paramount importance to us. Really? How about the guests at a Hilton hotel last night in New York who were terrorized when dozens of anti-ICE thugs took over the lobby? Yeah, they were eventually arrested, but they obviously thought that Mamdani had their backs. And by the way, think about it in this way. What would they have done if they had actually cornered an ICE agent in that lobby? And imagine if some right-wing contingent decided to take over a hotel where an LGBTQ group was staying, demanding an end to, I don't know, nudity at gay parades. We would never hear the end of this. There would have already been demands for hate crimes prosecutions. So the attacks on public accommodations, though, that first started in Minnesota, including this week in Maple Grove.
Violent protests overnight at a hotel that demonstrators said ICE agents were staying at. They tried to smash through the glass doors to get into the hotel. Police tried to use vending machines to block them.
Vending machines! But the feds are finally filing real charges here, and at least one rioter in one of the hotel sieges had a long, violent rap sheet that included beating a pregnant woman. So, look, these are the types of people, violent agitators, dangerous illegal aliens, that Democrats are defending. The cause that they think justifies shutting down the government, which again ends up doing what? Victimizing hardworking Americans. This is all orchestrated chaos.
Democrats will not vote to pass the budget that is before us if it includes Homeland Security. We will not do that. And our Republican colleagues in the Senate need to hear that, and they need to deal with it because they need us to pass this bill.
Now they're adopting these insane hardball tactics because pollsters tell them to, but they're making a big mistake. Because even in that Politico poll that they've been sending around all day, more voters prefer reforming ICE than the number who prefer eliminating the agency entirely, by 30% to 19%. By the way, all those numbers will shift when things calm down. And Republicans, though, they have to make this clear. Democrats claiming to favor common sense reforms for ICE, that's about as credible as when Biden's DHS Secretary Mayorkas claimed that the border is closed and secure. Look, that entire policy, by the way, was treasonous. I said it at the time. But at least Philly Soros DA, Larry Krasner, isn't even trying to fake it. He's not going ice fishing. He's going ice hunting.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. There will be accountability. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you.
Imagine if conservatives ever use that language, hunt them down. They're still talking about Charlottesville. Now, we finally found death penalty cases, I guess, that Democrats want to prosecute. This from the Democrat running for Ohio AG.
Hi, this is Elliot Forehand, candidate for Ohio Attorney General. I want to tell you what I mean when I say that I am going to kill Donald Trump. I mean, I'm going to obtain a conviction rendered by a jury of his peers at a standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Nice Elmer Fudd shirt, by the way. What a sick fool. What twisted. But this is why things are so violent in these blue cities. Nazi comparisons and punishments, it's all being normalized.
I don't think that the comparisons with Nazi Germany are extreme, because that's what happened too. That's why ordinary German citizens began to accept the idea that certain members of their community would be singled out.
And there's no one more odious than this creep.
I want Stephen Miller to be the #1 in the Nuremberg trials when this is done. When this is done, I want Stephen Miller to be the first one who is tried and convicted and dangles.
Dangles. By the neck, I guess that's what he's talking about. Now, backing down in any way to these vile radicals is out of the question. Nothing short of ending all deportations and opening the border back up is going to shut them up. Instead, the president needs to keep focusing on the economy, securing a safer, better future for the American people, and enforcing the immigration laws as written. Consumed by their hatred of Trump, hatred of traditional America, Democrats will eventually rot from the inside out. Meanwhile, conservatives, led by President Trump, they're going to keep offering concrete policies that make your lives better, not bitter. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.